Hey, everybody. Happy Monday and welcome back to the stream. I am obviously not in my home studio setup. I am somewhere else because I am back out on the road for the book tour for my awesome new book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. I am currently reporting live from my parents' basement. Behind me is the entire collection of children's books that my mother has yet to be able to emotionally part with. And honestly, I am quite grateful because all of these books are stuff that we will be able to hand on to our kids eventually, which is very, very fun. So we're operating on a bit of a different setup, on a bit of a different schedule, but it is so fun to be back in the mountains these next couple of days. As you guys know from the last few weeks, I am bouncing around all over the country for my book tour during speaking events and book signings and media and podcasts, the whole nine. It is very, very exciting. I'm in Colorado today because I was able to give a speech to the Colorado Federation of Young Republicans in Denver this afternoon, which was super, super fun. And tomorrow I'm headed back up to my alma mater at Colorado State University to give a speech to their Turning Point USA chapter. Then we are on to Seattle this week. Pray for my soul in Seattle on Wednesday, and then down to Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama on Thursday before headed home for Good Friday and Easter weekend, which will be very, very fun. I cannot wait to be there back home, but it is also very, very fun getting to see the whole country and meet you guys in real life, and of course, get you guys your own very copy of The End of the Alphabet. Numbers for bestseller lists are coming out in the next couple of days. We're doing super well on the Amazon bestseller list, but just in case you haven't had a chance to get your copy, please consider helping us out so we have a fighting chance to make the New York Times bestseller list and some other newspapers as well. It's going to be a bit of an uphill battle because they've strategically been leaving off a lot of conservatives over the last several years, but we stand a fighting chance if you guys help get us over that hump. So you can grab your own copy of my now best-selling book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America, in the link in the description of today's stream. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so very much for everything you are doing to help support me, to help support all of the work that I do as a creator. It is very exciting, and I feel very lucky to have this community rallying behind me. Everybody's asking if this is the Deathly Hallows hiding behind me. Obviously. Do you think I would grow up in a house that didn't support my obsession with Harry Potter? Come on. We've got a great stream lined up for you guys today because the Washington Post wrote maybe the most garbage piece of journalism I've ever seen in my entire life. We have to react to it and break it all down to try to replace these lies with the truth. And there's some stupid, crazy op-ed also published in the New York Post I wanted to get your guys' reactions to. That's maybe the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. People will do just about anything other than get married. So we've got two crazy articles to react to. Before we jump into all of that, I want to say hi to you guys in the live chat because it's been a couple days since we've done that. So if you're new especially, let us know who you are, where you're watching from, and how long you've been watching the stream. And as you guys are doing that, don't forget to hit the like button on this stream. That might look like a little thumbs up or a heart depending on where you're watching. And most importantly, you know the drill. Smash that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you happen to be streaming on today to help us continue organically growing these communities one day at a time. YouTube, you guys have been slaying the game on this the last few days, and thank you so much for all of that. Okay, let's jump in because we got a lot to talk about, but let's say hi to some people. Over on YouTube, we've got Miguel and Rob and Delane Thomas watching. TKG says, it's past 3 p.m. Eastern, LOL. I know. I told you guys before I departed from the state of Florida that when I'm bouncing around all the time zones, we've got weird speech times, we've got weird media times. It's not always going to be 3 p.m. Eastern until mid-April, but then we're back on the normal schedule. So thank you guys so much for rolling with the punches. We've got Tuco Wright and Eric watching on YouTube. Over on Rumble, JN and Old Man Trucker and John Best are kicking things off for us in the chat. We've got Red 4, Magic Def, Alex Padron, Josh, PST, we've got M-Rock and more over in our locals chat, and we've got a lot of people watching over on Getter as well. Thank you guys all so much for being here and for your patience with the changing schedule on everything. Okay. Who is ready for maybe the most garbage piece of journalism you've ever read in your entire life? When I saw this posted on the Washington Post's Instagram account, I immediately screenshotted it because I thought there's literally no way in hell the higher ups at the Washington Post allowed this to be published. And yet here we are. They haven't retracted it. They haven't deleted it. It is without a doubt proof beyond any misconception that the media is specifically trying to gaslight us and spread propaganda and then point the finger at independent creators like me and call us propagandists more than any other piece of supposed journalism I've ever seen, particularly in the last several months. Are you ready? I don't think you are. Are you sitting down for this? Because we're doing it. Women are getting off birth control amid misinformation explosion. Published by The Washington Post. Again, as soon as I saw this posted on their Instagram account, I didn't even read the whole article yet. I immediately screenshotted it because I thought there's no way this is a real article. Like, this is a joke. Somebody hacked their account and is trolling them. No, they're actually trying to make the case that the reason women are quitting their hormonal birth control, which is true, they are quitting in droves across the entire political spectrum. I write about it quite often in my book as one of the main examples of how Gen Z is being overwhelmingly culturally conservative, much to everybody's surprise. Shocker, a whole generation of us who had been prescribed these magic one-size-fits-all pills that were going to solve all of our problems in life are waking up 5, 7, 10 years down the road and saying, yeah, actually, I'm tired of being anxious all the time. I'm tired of being depressed all the time. I'm tired of being fat with migraines all the time. I'm tired of my acne not going away, despite that being the reason you prescribed this medication to me. I'm tired of being at risk for cancer and strokes and blood clots. And I don't know, maybe I don't want to take this anymore. Yeah, the Washington Post is trying to convince you, if you are one of those millions of women who have courageously made that decision, despite all of the pressure overwhelmingly from the healthcare system to stay on it, to quit your birth control, you're doing that because of right-wing propaganda and misinformation, rather than, I don't know, doing research for actual information, actually following the science, actually taking ownership and responsibility for your own health, instead of just blindly listening to whatever the loudest voice in society is telling you to do. So here we go. The very first paragraph: search for birth control on TikTok or Instagram and a cascade of misleading videos vilifying hormonal contraception appear. Young women blaming their weight gain on the pill. They don't say that that's wrong, but they say that it's part of a cascade of misleading videos, even though gaining weight on the pill is an actual well-documented side effect of hormonal birth control pills. Right-wing commentators claiming that some birth control can lead to infertility, despite that being known as a potential side effect of certain forms of birth control. They have to tell you that's misleading. That's misinformation. That's propaganda. Testimonials complaining of depression and anxiety. Nope. Not propaganda. In fact, a very, very well-documented side effect of hormonal birth control pills. But do you see how they cleverly weave that in the first 4 sentences of misleading videos vilifying hormonal contraception? Oops, I'm clicking the wrong buttons. I'm sorry. These people are so ridiculously brazen that they will convince you, they will gaslight you into believing that the side effects listed on the box of hormonal birth control is a right-wing conspiracy theory, is a QAnon dark web secret talking point to try to harm women, to try to talk women into hating their medication and quitting their medication in droves. But it gets better in the second paragraph. Instead, many social media influencers recommend natural alternatives, such as timing sex to menstrual cycles, aka something called natural family planning, which has been a well-documented and very effective use of family planning, or if you want to call it birth control, for thousands of years among humanity. This is a very known concept that has been in practice and is quite effective for thousands of years. But the Washington Post can't admit that. They have to call it a less effective birth control method that doctors warn could result in unwanted pregnancies in a country where abortion is now banned or restricted in nearly half the states. Really? 5 sentences into this damning piece, this damning journalism investigating right-wing conspiracy theories, you're trying to tell us that NFP is ineffective and that it's harmful for women and that it's less effective than artificial birth control, which actually is just objectively not true. Like, that is misinformation. That is propaganda. But who fact checks the fact checkers? Nobody. Nobody's going to get a community note on this particular piece of, if you want to call it journalism, because these are the people who do the fact checking. I read those 5 sentences and my jaw hit the floor. Like, genuinely, how these people have the audacity to call you a conspiracy theorist and to call people like me, these dangerous people on the internet spreading rampant misinformation and conspiracy theories to harm women and to put them in harm's way, when it's quite literally the media that's doing that while pointing the finger at you and calling you the boogeyman for doing it. Like I said, I genuinely couldn't believe this was a real article. So in lieu of actually, I don't know, asking all of the questions and investigating why women are quitting birth control or doing any substantive research, what you think journalism would be predicated upon, the Washington Post has taken it upon themselves in the last few days to specifically attack a handful of social media content creators and particular companies, namely Evie Magazine, who I do a whole lot of work with, and their spinoff brand, 28 Wellness, for destroying women's health in the name of right-wing propaganda. Brett Cooper is specifically named in this article, and we'll read through all of it together, about how they had to work with social media companies to take down her videos exposing the truth about birth control. Honestly, I'm shocked that our videos haven't been targeted more about this, because they've gotten tens of millions of views collectively across platforms. And they also happen to stray out of the right-wing political sphere and conservative movement to specifically go after holistic health content creators, trying to suggest that moving away from big pharma or trying to divest from the pharmaceutical industry is somehow this QAnon conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat decision, instead of people from all across the political spectrum just taking ownership of their own health and taking responsibility for what we put in our bodies. Check this out. Physicians say, according to the Washington Post, that they're seeing an explosion of birth control misinformation online targeting a vulnerable demographic. People in their teens and early 20s, who also just happen to be the people that Big Pharma is trying to shove birth control into our mouths, who are more likely to believe what they see on their phones because of algorithms that feed them a stream of videos reinforcing messages often divorced from scientific evidence, even though the Washington Post is quite clearly admitting to us they are the ones ignoring scientific evidence. While doctors say hormonal contraception, which includes birth control pills and IUDs, is safe and effective, where have we heard that term before? Where have we heard the safe and effective talking point over and over and over again in the last several years? I don't know. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I feel like we've seen this movie before. They worry that the profession's long-standing lack of transparency about some of the serious but rare side effects has left many patients seeking information from unqualified online communities. Let me just clarify for you very quickly what constitutes an unqualified online community. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of comments on videos like my own of real women who have been prescribed birth control for 5, 7, 10, 20 years, telling their authentic, independent stories of how they quit. Transparency is somehow misinformation now. And an unaccredited misinformation campaign is just people telling the truth about what their experience taking these pills is. Apparently, unless you are a MD that buys into all of the nonsense of the radical left and probably is in bed with Big Pharma, you are not an expert to talk about what these pills do to your body, even if you might have personally been taking them for a decade or longer in your own life. It continues. It continues. The backlash to birth control comes at a time of rampant misinformation about basic health tenets amid poor digital literacy and a wider political debate over reproductive rights. Okay, of course, we have to tie this back into abortion because that's really what the media is trying to get us to pay attention to leading up to November, in which far-right conservatives argue that a broad acceptance of birth control has altered traditional gender roles and weakened the family. Well, no, it's not far-right conservatives trying to spread misinformation. This is scientific evidence as they continue to do studies on the side effects of birth control that women are more attracted to more feminine men, for example, while we're taking hormonal contraceptives, that women have a much lower libido and sex drive even in their marriages when we are taking hormonal contraception. I don't think that's a far right-wing QAnon conspiracy theory. I think that's just scientific evidence that, of course, is impacting the family dynamic and changing gender roles and impacting everything about us, who we're attracted to, who's attracted to us, what our stress response looks like, what our mental health looks like, and certainly our physical health. And if that's impacting us at the individual level, obviously it's impacting our families and communities and country at large. The Washington Post says physicians and researchers say little data is available about the scale of this new phenomenon, but anecdotally, more patients are coming in with misconceptions about birth control fueled by conservative commentators. They cherry-picked one OBGYN, a man, with an LGBT flag in the background, so thank you for picking this specific OBGYN about birth control pills because he hasn't taken them in his own life. So surely he's the expert. Michael Belmonte, an OBGYN in Washington, D.C., said people are putting themselves out there as experts on birth control and speaking to things that the science does not bear out. I am seeing those direct failures of this misinformation. And again, what do they mean by misinformation about birth control and people who aren't experts? Women who have been taking these pills for decades, who have lived through the dramatic, devastating side effects of hormonal birth control pills. I can't tell you how many thousands upon thousands of comments I've gotten on my videos that I've posted about birth control from people who say, I wound up in the emergency room because of a blood clot. I had a stroke. I had an embolism. I had a heart attack. I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I almost died because of my birth control. This is a very real side of the story that nobody wants to talk about because if you're the patient, you're not the expert. If you've experienced these side effects, you're not the expert. Instead, overweight, middle-aged men sitting in their very overpriced, high-paid offices in Washington, D.C., who don't have a uterus, who haven't experienced the direct side effects of hormonal birth control, who support all of the leftist talking points of the approved narrative, trademark, patent pending by the loudest people in the media, peep the LGBTQ flag and the facts are important sign, or alternative facts maybe to you, Dr. Belmont. Those people get to be the experts. Those people get to tell you that you're crazy, that you're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, that you're just buying into rampant misinformation fueled by the radical right wing of society. If you say, I don't feel good taking this medication. The audacity. And like I said, as we're inching closer to November of 2024, of course, they have to tie all of this back into abortion because their number one resounding drumbeat about women, women's healthcare, women's rights, women's autonomy, has to always circulate around the narrative that women need abortion or they will literally die. And if they need abortion, they also need birth control, period, full stop. Which, by the way, logically doesn't even make any sense. It used to be in American politics and culture that if you told women, let's take birth control en masse, let's make sure everyone is prescribed this medication, let's make sure everyone is on these pharmaceuticals, it was to mitigate abortion. It was to make abortion less popular, less needed, to take the need away. But now they're saying, no, we need abortion, and because we need abortion, we also need birth control, which should tell you everything you need to know about this being safe and effective in preventing unwanted pregnancy. For the record, by the way, you can look this up. Fact check me on it. The state of California has the most birth control, hormonal birth control use per capita, and it is literally being handed out like candy in California to kids in school. It's ridiculous. And they also have the highest abortion rate per capita. So safe and effective don't really seem to be two words that come to mind in terms of preventing unwanted pregnancy. But here's what this lovely man who is mansplaining what taking birth control is like to all of us women had to say about it. He says women frequently come in for abortions after believing what they see on social media about the dangers of hormonal birth control and the effectiveness of tracking periods to prevent pregnancy. Many of these patients have traveled from states that have completely or partially banned abortions, he said, including Texas, Idaho, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. He said doctors stand a better chance of dispelling misinformation when they listen to patients' concerns, noting that some are more worried about the side effects of birth control than the effectiveness doctors have, quiet part out loud here, long been trained to emphasize. In other words, they've been trained not to talk about the side effects, which is true. And they've been trained specifically to overemphasize the effectiveness. It's safe and effective. It's safe and effective. It's safe and effective. LOL that they said this to try to give credibility to these doctors. And instead, they just said the quiet part out loud, that the pharmaceutical industry is quite literally telling doctors, don't harp on any of the side effects because that's going to freak people out. Nobody wants to be told you're going to have a stroke and blood clots and migraines, and you might have a brain disorder, or you might have loss of bone density, or you might have cancer, or you might, I don't know, die. Nobody wants to hear any of that. They only want to hear about how effective it is, so gloss over that part and really overemphasize this part. These people are just admitting everything in this article. Again, who allowed the Washington Post to publish this? Because this has backfired very, very substantially. It goes on to say he's adopted a recommendation that physicians candidly discuss common side effects, such as nausea, headaches, breast tenderness, and bleeding between periods. Many of these resolve on their own or can be mitigated by switching forms of birth control. But he doesn't want to talk about any of the more negative side effects, any of the more serious side effects, any of the life-threatening side effects, because instead he's long been trained to just emphasize the effectiveness instead. Then, of course, the Washington Post has to somehow make this about race. How this has anything to do with race, I don't know. But let's hear this. Women of color whose communities have historically been exploited by the medical establishment may be particularly vulnerable to misinformation. You have got to be kidding me. An assistant professor at UT Health in Houston said that forced sterilization of tens of thousands of Black, Latina, and Indigenous women happened under U.S. government programs in the 20th century. So that's another huge reason why these negative videos around birth control get a lot of fanfare, because there's already the stigma attached to it, and taking advantage of women of color to sterilize them is a long part of our history. But abortion good. But the abortion industry is here to help. But the abortion industry specifically loves to care disproportionately for women of color who seek the vast majority of abortions, because abortion facilities are within minority neighborhoods more often than not. They will try to gaslight you as a woman of color into thinking I am at risk of very severe health problems by listening to Brett Cooper or holistic health content creators or doctors or other scientists online about the truth behind birth control. That puts me in danger. But thank God I have the abortion industry, who certainly is not exploiting me for the color of my skin, who certainly wasn't founded on the idea of exterminating less desirable populations, in the words of Margaret Sanger, from the American people. I have actually no words. I have no words. Only in 2024 America is the media this brazen. So they've tied it to abortion. They've tied it to racism now, obviously. Let's see where they go from here. For influencers of all political stripes seeking fame and fortune on the internet, negative content draws more clicks. Nicole Bendayan, who has amassed over 1 million combined followers on Instagram and TikTok for her holistic health coaching business. Love Nicole, by the way, and she has reached out to me about the content we've made about this article today. She's awesome. Shared on social media that she stopped using hormonal birth control because she was concerned, as most women are, about weight gain, low libido, and intermittent bleeding, which she had assumed were side effects of hormonal birth control, which they are, by the way. Weight gain, intermittent bleeding, low sex drive, headaches, etc. are all well-documented side effects of hormonal birth control. So she makes a video about this, and her video ends up getting 10.5 million views on TikTok alone about quitting birth control and instead deciding to learn how to track her cycle to make sure that she knows how to naturally plan her family and take advantage of how her body is naturally working to live in tune with her menstrual cycle. The Washington Post tries to discredit her and specifically says the 29-year-old, as a put down somehow, is not a licensed medical specialist. You don't say. I don't think she ever pretended to be a licensed medical specialist, WAPO. But she's a real person who experienced these real side effects that changed her real health. How dare she? How dare she tell other people about her experience and try to be more transparent and vulnerable about the pharmaceutical industry? How dare she indeed? Here's how they portray this journey. She says, I had a lot of really bad symptoms and went to see a bunch of different doctors. Every single one of them dismissed me. Even when I asked if it had anything to do with birth control, they all said no. She did an interview for this piece. She had used a vaginal ring for 8 years and an IUD for 2. And she said that when she went off birth control, her symptoms went away. For the record, Nicole has now made an 8-part video series of how the Washington Post has twisted her words intentionally to change the meaning of what she said in this interview. So go check out her Instagram because she's been great, really exposing this. She says, I believe that access to birth control is important. I just don't think that we're given informed consent. She has told her followers that birth control may deplete magnesium, vitamins B, C, and E, and zinc levels. She charges hundreds of dollars for a 3-month virtual program. Well, yeah, she's a virtual nutritionist. She's a holistic health nutritionist. So that's her business. That's what she's doing. But they have to make this look like some Ponzi scheme, MLM, crazy multimedia marketing scheme trying to take people's money by telling them a lie instead of just trying to help people figure out their hormones. When asked about the science behind why her symptoms resolved, she said she did her own research and found studies that backed up what she was feeling. In other words, she found studies that went against the grain of what the vast majority of people in the pharmaceutical industry are telling us about hormonal birth control. Not as a bad piece of propaganda, but people who are actually asking the real questions about the side effects of birth control. Courageous people like Dr. Sarah Hill, for example, the author of one of my favorite books, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, talking about all of the crazy, crazy, crazy things that the pharmaceutical industry is just refusing to study, but a few courageous people are finally getting out of their shell and breaking free from the approved narrative, trademark patent pending, in order to start asking these questions. It goes on, in recent years, an entire industry has popped up around regulating hormones that experts say is often a cash grab. Of course, they'll tell you regulating your hormones through birth control pills, that's not a cash grab. That's not a Ponzi scheme. That's not trying to line the pockets of the pharmaceutical industry. That's good. That's for your health. There is no proven science that the hormone balancing regimens pushed by some social media influencers work. TikTok recently removed at least 5 videos linking birth control to mental health issues and other problems. Get this, specifically after the Washington Post asked them to. The Washington Post had reached out to TikTok to ask how the company prevents the spread of misinformation. And after that, TikTok removed at least 5 videos linking birth control to mental health issues, which again is not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not some QAnon tinfoil hat talking point. Depression, anxiety, suicidation, loss of stress response, feeling just generally meh about your life. These are well-documented side effects of taking hormonal birth control pills. But the media can never admit that, particularly not the media in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. And we'll get to that in the stream, I promise. So instead, they have to call up social media companies and say, delete these videos because we're the fact checkers. Nobody else gets to fact check us, but we get to fact check everybody else. Delete these videos or we're going to have a problem. Or you're spreading dangerous misinformation in the process. I mean, at least they're admitting it, but who let the Washington Post publish this article? Because they've said like 8 quiet part out loud moments throughout the last few paragraphs alone. One of the videos was Nicole that we just talked about saying that certain forms of birth control could make users more susceptible to STIs. A TikTok spokeswoman said that the videos violated company policies prohibiting inaccurate, misleading, or false content that may cause significant harm to individuals or society. But of course, they can't just remove videos from holistic health content creators. They have to go over right of center conservative political commentators too. They say it's an underlying conservative push. Prominent conservative commentators have seized upon mistrust of medical professionals, sowing misinformation as a way to discourage the use of birth control. Some commentators inaccurately depict hormonal contraception as causing abortions. Again, well-documented actual science. There are numerous forms of hormonal birth control. And I'm sure my stream is probably going to get taken down for saying this because now telling the truth about science is apparently misinformation and you misleading the public. But look this up for yourself. Fact check me. I more than welcome you to do this. Now, they're saying it's a lie, it's misinformation, or it's misleading at the very least to inaccurately depict hormonal contraception as causing abortion. There are countless forms of hormonal contraception acting as an abortifacient, meaning when you take these pills, it doesn't actually prohibit conception from happening. It doesn't stop an egg from fertilizing with the unifying of a sperm. It just says you can't implant once that fertilized egg exists in the lining of your uterine wall and it expels that baby. So even if that baby was conceived yesterday, it's still a person. Conception has still happened. Fertilization has still happened. A baby has been created, but birth control prohibits that child from implanting in the uterine wall. That is an abortifacient drug. That is what that is. I don't know how plainly you could possibly explain that other than what I just said, but the mainstream media is now on record going into the November election because they can never be honest about either the pharmaceutical industry or the abortion industry, who pays for the mainstream media, by the way. They are now on the record saying that when you say that hormonal birth control allows for or causes abortions, which it can in many circumstances, that is conservative commentators seizing upon the mistrust of medical professionals to sow misinformation and inaccurately depict hormonal contraception as causing abortions. These people disgust me. They will justify anything to destroy women's health, actually, and then call it saving women's health somehow, and to permit the abortion industry to kill as many children as humanly possible. That's what their MO is here. Amazingly, they focused on one particular influencer, content creator in this particular piece of journalism, and that is the incredible, very, very successful Brett Cooper, who is the host of the comment section over at the Daily Wire. Brett has talked about birth control use very significantly, both in the comment section and in her social media content that's a bit more tailored to her, and especially on TikTok has had several videos go mega viral about the use of birth control. I say this all the time. There is easily not a single other person other than Brett who has been more effective in trying to tell the truth to our generation. I am a huge cheerleader of hers. We are dear friends. I could not be more proud of her. And so I find it interesting that the Washington Post is specifically going after Brett Cooper, because in the past, other articles related to conservative commentators, conservative content creators are freaking out and trying to get everybody to quit birth control. They have focused on much smaller content creators in stature and in following, because I don't really think they saw it as much of a threat until recently. Brett has a combined following of tens of millions of people. Her videos reach billions of people, arguably, on any given monthly basis. And she is more effective than any other woman of our generation trying to tell the truth to our peers in the language that we understand and on a platform that we understand, largely on TikTok. The fact that the Washington Post specifically had to go after Brett Cooper for a video about birth control instead of somebody with 50,000 followers or 25,000 followers or 5,000 subscribers on YouTube tells me that the mainstream media and the pharmaceutical industry alike are shaking in their boots, are genuinely terrified of the impact that a small group of people, a small group of content creators are having in allowing our generation to take responsibility and ownership over our own health. They are terrified, meaning that it's not up to them, or it's not effective enough for them to go after the small fish in the big pond anymore. That was just a viral headline. Now they have to go after the biggest fish in the big pond because they're realizing if they don't, all of a sudden an entire generation of young women is going to wake up and say, you all lied to us. Here's what they had to say about Brett. Brett Cooper, a media commentator for the conservative Daily Wire, argued in a viral TikTok clip that birth control can impact fertility, cause women to gain weight, and even alter whom they are attracted to. All well-documented scientific evidence related to hormonal birth control use. It racked up over 219,000 likes before TikTok removed it following the inquiry of the Washington Post. In other words, the mainstream media is so personally terrified of the impact of one 20-something-year-old girl telling the truth about the pharmaceutical industry that they had to call up the most powerful social media company on the face of the earth and say, delete that video or else. Are we not seeing the quiet part out loud here, people? Are you not at least a little terrified of a TikTok ban now? Knowing that these companies, the media, politicians, competitor social media companies can call somebody up and say, delete that video or else, and they will? I mean, this is even TikTok deleting these videos, so I understand the argument about algorithm transparency and censorship. I've been a victim of that myself many, 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 many times. But this is with this platform still in place. If we remove TikTok as a platform from Generation Z's cultural zeitgeist, you can kiss any chance of virality for people like Brett Cooper goodbye, frankly. Good luck trying to tell the truth to Generation Z when the Washington Post can call up Meta, can call up Instagram, can call up Twitter, your favorite congressman who you voted for, who wants to censor you and silence you, can call up Mark Zuckerberg and say, delete that or else, which they are. I don't know about you. I don't want to live in 1984. I want to live in 2024. And I have a significant problem with the mainstream media being so personally victimized and threatened by actual journalism that isn't happening in the offices of the Washington Post. It isn't happening in the halls of the New York Times. It isn't happening in the sets of Fox News or Newsmax or CNN or MSNBC. I spend a lot of time in those spaces, and it's not happening there. It's happening here. It's happening on live streams like this. And the media is telling us today, they are calling up social media CEOs to say, not the approved narrative. Shut it down immediately. Does that not freak you out? Does that not make you feel like you're living in North Korea? I mean, it should. And yet more and more people are cheering on this idea of ban this platform, ban that, ban this, ban that. What are we doing? In the Daily Wire video, a different one, Cooper and political commentator Candace Owens denounced birth control pills and IUDs as unnatural, with Candace saying that she's a big advocate of getting women to realize this stuff is not normal, and claiming that viewers of her content told her that copper IUDs can harm a woman's fertility. Medical experts, who, this guy? Where is he? Oh, I don't know. I don't know where he went. The fat guy sitting in his office in DC, medical experts, say there is no evidence birth control impacts fertility long term. On his show, Ben Shapiro, another right-wing pundit, calls discussing birth control side effects a political third rail, while interviewing a guest who proclaimed that women on birth control pills are attracted to men who are less traditionally masculine. Notice that they're not naming who those guests are. They're not giving any credibility to those people. But if you go look up for yourself the book, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control by Dr. Sarah Hill, these are incredibly well-educated PhD-level scientists tenured at some of the most competitive universities on the face of the planet, starting to do the research into who women are attracted to when they're taking the pill. And these are peer-reviewed, medically approved studies in official medical journals, but they're just fringe right-wing tinfoil hat people. We can't give them any credibility in the Washington Post. None of these figures responded to requests for comment. So they've attacked holistic health. They've attacked conservative commentators and content creators. And then they had to go even one step further to attack Evie Magazine. You guys might not know this. I've done a lot of work with Evie Magazine over the years. I've written several articles for them. I think they are the most phenomenal people in the world. Brittany Martinez, who is the founder of Evie Magazine, is a fashion model, worked in the fashion industry for a long time, and was really, really frustrated with, frankly, just the all-out misrepresentation of women in the women's journalism space. If you look at all of the articles in Cosmopolitan and Teen Vogue, I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about what they publish in Teen Vogue these days. It is alarming just how bad it has gotten to try to emphasize degenerate culture, to try to emphasize LGBTQ ideology, to try to push women towards the pharmaceutical industry. It has anything but empowering women in the content of these articles in most women's magazines. So she took it upon herself to create Evie Magazine, who I'm a huge fan of. I read almost all of their articles. We react to them all the time here on the live stream and on my short form content. I've written some things for them in the past. And just recently, they created a spin-off company called 28 Wellness that specifically is encouraging women to track their cycles and to embrace natural family planning and to understand how their body is naturally working. Here's what the Washington Post had to say about that. The online magazine Evie, described by Rolling Stone as the conservative Gen Z's version of Cosmo, urges readers to ditch hormonal birth control with headlines such as, "Why are so many feminists silent about the very real dangers of birth control?" Brittany Martinez said in an email that the outlet's work has made questioning birth control mainstream. Totally agree with that. Women have been silenced and shamed by legacy media, the pharmaceutical industry, and in many cases, their own doctors who have gaslit them about their experiences with hormonal birth control. They now have to specifically attack 28 Wellness because it's backed by a conservative billionaire, because they created a new product through 28 Wellness called Toxic Breakup. And if you've followed any of Evie Magazine stuff in the last several weeks, Toxic Breakup is a new, very highly scientifically backed nutritional cleanse called the Birth Control Detox that 28 Wellness just announced as its very first actual hard product selling to their customers. If I had had something like this when I quit hormonal birth control pills, it would have been a totally different experience for me. I wouldn't have had to worry so much about all of the crazy mood swings I was going through, what my body was doing, how I could naturally regulate my cycles instead of having to constantly be haywire all the frickin' time. And I actually was working with Evie Magazine to announce Toxic Breakup on TikTok because of TikTok Shop. As soon as this Washington Post article comes out, TikTok decided to completely remove and take down Toxic Breakup, a natural, very well scientifically backed by some of the most educated nutritionists and endocrinologists on the planet, because it's dangerous for women. Brittany ended up tweeting this: "TikTok just removed Toxic Breakup, our birth control detox, from the app last night after they guaranteed its approval ahead of launch and even committed to boosting it across the app." The Washington Post journalist bragged about having a hand in taking down Brett Cooper's video and multiple videos from other TikTok influencers on birth control for misinformation. TikTok read the comments on Washington Post Instagram, or read the comments on the Washington Post Instagram post. Yeah, we're going to pull that up here in just a second. WAPO didn't interview a single renowned researcher on the subject, like Dr. Sarah Hill, who I've been talking about with her book. Instead, they interviewed a male doctor who has never and never will take hormonal birth control or know its effects personally. This is disgraceful. I have been very vocal in defending TikTok from being banned by the government. I hope that they reverse this swiftly. I do too, because as staunch of a defender as I have been for TikTok as a platform and the impact that it has had for young women and young men alike of our generation in dramatically changing culture and allowing us to embrace objective truth for ourselves, the last few days have been very, very, very frustrating. So if we jump over to Instagram now, this is the best part. The Washington Post has gotten so much backlash on their Instagram post related to this article. They've deleted the post. They've deleted it. Nowhere to be found. They got so many comments from Generation Z women saying, I am not conservative and I quit birth control because it was making me sick, or I have nothing to do with conservative politics and I quit birth control because it made me depressed, anxious, suicidal, and miserable. So many comments flooded this Instagram post immediately that they actually turned comments off because they were so immediately intimidated by the backlash. And it looks like now they have officially deleted the Instagram post of this article, of the one that we've been reading, because it's gotten so many horrible comments on it. You actually cannot make this stuff up. Screw you, Washington Post, is all we really have to say about that. You have such audacity trying to gaslight women into making us feel stupid, into making us feel like we fell for misinformation or propaganda, into making us look like the bad guy for encouraging women to take ownership and responsibility over our own health and to stop blindly following the pharmaceutical industry. And in our last couple of minutes, what I first want to remind you of is this. Who owns the Washington Post? Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, owns the Washington Post. That happened a few years ago, not new information by any means. And what is Jeff Bezos also one of the world's #1 top contributors to? Oh, yeah, the pharmaceutical industry. So, coincidence? I think not, in the words of The Incredibles. This tells you everything you need to know. Not to mention, somebody reminded me on my Instagram comment section earlier today that Amazon just announced this week, for the first time ever, they are going to be working to provide over-the-counter birth control, over your phone, I guess, birth control, called the O pill, without any prescription from a doctor and without any consultation at a pharmacy. That you will be able to order hormonal birth control pills through Amazon, who is acquiring substantial aspects of the pharmaceutical industry, and it'll be delivered at your door mere days later. So, gee, I wonder what the financial incentive of Jeff Bezos's newspaper, the Washington Post, publishing journalistic garbage like this article could possibly be. It's giving Bill Gates trying to attack the meat industry while simultaneously funding lab-grown meat to me. It's exactly the same thing. And the more we, the people, continue to take back the power, the more one person, a singular person rooted in truth, being willing to speak out against the barrage, the constant deluge of misinformation and propaganda in the mainstream media, the more one person has the courage to do that, the more we are changing the tide. As I said, there is a reason that the Washington Post went after Evie Magazine and Brett Cooper in this article, not some middle-of-the-road influencer that nobody's ever heard of with 20,000 followers on Instagram. It's because we're making a difference. We are changing culture. We are changing the tide. We are re-embracing truth, which is exactly what my book is all about. That our generation is sick and tired of being told what's good for us, what's going to make us happy, what's going to make us fulfilled and feel purpose in life, when every single thing the radical left is presenting to us on a silver platter is hollow and empty and propagandized to be full of lies to steer us in the wrong direction. We have about 5 minutes left before I have to jump off to do a radio interview. But in those 5 minutes, I want to share with you a bit transparently about my experience taking hormonal birth control pills, because no, I'm not the expert as defined by the Washington Post. Will this stream get taken down? Maybe, because I'm not a medical expert. I didn't actually get my MD despite having 2 degrees in biomedical sciences. I'm not the expert. I'm not the expert after taking hormonal birth control pills for 9 years of my life, after every single healthcare provider in my life told me that you need to be on this because otherwise you're going to be miserable. But I am an expert. I'm an expert in what it did to my own life. I'm an expert in listening to the testimonies of millions of women, by doing the research independently, by asking people to share their stories using my platforms and my spheres of influence. And I have to tell you, getting off of hormonal birth control was the single best decision I have ever made for my physical health. Nothing else even remotely comes close. I was put on hormonal birth control pills at 15 years old. I was a sophomore in high school because I had tried every single pharmaceutical on the market for acne. I had terrible, debilitating acne. And obviously, the answer to that is probably not more pharmaceuticals, but we didn't know what we knew now at the time that I was a sophomore in high school. It probably was mostly a diet issue more than anything else, but tried every single pharmaceutical on the market, eventually ran out of options and had to take Accutane. And if you know anything about Accutane, it is extremely tough on your body. If you get pregnant while you're taking Accutane, it causes severe, severe birth defects. So the government mandated that any patient of Accutane be taking 2 forms of hormonal birth control at the same time. Only some dermatologists would actually believe you if you pledged abstinence as one of your forms of birth control, which luckily mine is a neighbor and she did. She believed me. So abstinence was one of my forms of birth control and hormonal birth control pills was my second. And I remember being told repeatedly by every dermatologist I saw, by every primary care physician I saw, by every healthcare practitioner in my life, well, it's good, actually. It's good that you're also going to be taking birth control pills and you need to stay on them after these 5-6 months of Accutane because it's going to keep regulating your cycle to make sure you don't break out every month around your period, to make sure that you don't get really heavy bleeding or cramps or back pain during your period. You're going to feel great. You're going to feel amazing. It's going to take care of all of these problems. You aren't going to cramp anymore. You aren't going to have pain anymore. And you won't even get a period. How cool is that? No woman actually wants to deal with that. I fell for those lies, even as a very well scientifically trained biomedical scientist myself for 9 years of my life. And it took reading Dr. Sarah Hill's This Is Your Brain on Birth Control book, cannot recommend it enough, for me to wake up and realize that I had been a hollow shell of myself for almost a decade, that I was anxious and depressed and miserable all the time. No wonder I always felt like I had my life being over every 5 minutes in high school and college. It took reading this book to realize, am I attracted to a totally different type of person than I thought I would ever be attracted to? Interesting. Luckily, I met my fiance now when I was not on birth control, thank goodness. But that's what it took. It took reading this book for me to realize I had lost interest in all of my hobbies, and I didn't really have interest in anything positive in my life. I just felt neutral and middle of the road all the time. I wanted something more. And the few years that I've had since quitting hormonal birth control pills have been singularly the best health-related years of my life. My body is doing what it is meant to do. I don't feel beholden to migraines anymore, which I was getting almost every single day to be on pharmaceutical migraine medication. I love my relationship life. My relationship is thriving. I'm getting married in a few months, in like 95 days, which is crazy. I don't get headaches anymore. My periods feel very normal. They're not that extreme. I don't break out all the time, shockingly, despite being told that was inevitably going to happen. I have so much I could say about the positive benefits that it has brought to my life to not be taking this artificial synthetic crap every single day. And I have to tell you, if you're on the fence, it is the best decision I ever made, and it will be the best decision you ever make too. I have tons of videos about birth control on my Instagram for more information about all of that, and would love for you guys to check it out. Before we go, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the stream today, and a huge, huge shout out to our amazing friends over at Public Square for being our headline sponsor of the stream. Public Square is the best company under the sun, doing everything they can to help you support companies that share your values. Check them out at publicsquare.com. I got a jet because it's still book week, and I have an interview with the radio in Orlando, Florida. So I am signing off for the night, but we are back for the stream at the normal time, 3 p.m. Eastern, I promise, tomorrow. I love you guys so, so very much, and we will see you then. Bye.